What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast for a bit of an unconventional episode, an unconventional drop time that is for the middle of a Friday. But I kind of wanted you guys to have the chance to, if you're really getting eager, looking forward to the Duke Carolina game on Saturday, that you've got something to look forward to, and obviously it's been a very cool week for Duke fans and for Duke in general. It's a big week, final game of the regular season against our rival that beat the Blue Devils last time out. And so now Duke has a chance to get them back and get them back in Cameron and tie the regular season title. And obviously it's Jeremy Roach, Ryan Young, and Spencer Hubbard's senior night as well, which I'll talk about more after the game and recapping that game, how it went, and putting kind of those seniors' careers, especially Jeremy Roach, into perspective because of how important and terrific he has been throughout his career. I mentioned that on Twitter that he's got 1,395 points, which I believe makes him 36th all time in scoring at Duke. It seems that he'll cross the 1,400 point threshold on his senior night, which is a pretty cool thing. So, obviously there's looking forward to that game, which is huge. So this episode's about looking forward to things in the short term, but also looking forward to things in the long term, because obviously earlier this week we got the news, I was in the middle of class, got the news that Khaman Maluach had committed to Duke University, which was not unexpected, I might say. They were saying that the commitment would come at some point during March. I didn't think it would come this early in March, if I'm being honest with you, but I'm kind of glad it did. I'm kind of glad that it happened during the regular season, not during the postseason, so we can really focus our attention on what goes down in the postseason. Not to imply that this is a distraction whatsoever. It's just a good thing to happen at any time. But it's not. It wasn't too much of a shocker to me. Duke was in need of a rim protecting center, or of a center in general next season. They didn't really have one. I mean, the closest thing to a center on next year's team, I guess, is Patrick Ngongba and then Sean Stewart. There's some concerns about Ngongba and where he'll be health wise, but I'll talk about that in a second. I don't want to sow any doubts in people. I'm not any sort of insider that knows the exacts of Ngongba's timetable, but I know that, anytime you take a long time off from basketball, it's kind of difficult to reacclimate. We saw that with AJ Griffin in 2022. But it was a needed position for Duke, and is an incredibly big yet a very talented player who was not ranked by most metrics before the commitment. And I guess after he committed to an American school, they thought, let's slap him in somewhere. So 24/7 Sports ranks Khaman Maluach as the number 3 overall player in the class of 2024. I'm glad that I made the graphics and the edits 2 days before that, man, so I could knock him out and get him out real early. Just a kind of nutty class for Duke when you talk about everybody they're bringing in. Number 1 player Cooper Flagg, number 3 player Khaman Maluach. Obviously, you've also got McDonald's All-American Isaiah Evans and 5-star players in Con Canapel and Patrick Ngongba, who I've just talked about, and then 4-star, who I think is a very underrated player, in Darren Harris. So there's a lot of different angles, a lot of different things that to talk about here. Obviously, I think there's the what does Duke's roster look like in 2024-25? There's how does Maluach fit, and then where some of the players are mocking in the draft, I think, is also an interesting thing to look at. And then I kind of also want to talk about this perception of the Duke does less with more crowd. And then I'll get into some more stuff later, and I'll be previewing the UNC game as well.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network or DM at Duke_Wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
So I guess what I'll first talk about is where Maluach fits in. Khaman Maluach fits in seamlessly to me. Seamlessly at the starting five. He's 7'2" with a 9'8" standing reach, which is just ludicrous. That's a higher standing reach than Victor Wembanyama. Khaman said, and I think there's reason to believe this is true, or possible at the very least, that he could still grow more, that he could end up being 7'3" or 7'4" or so. Maybe not while he's at Duke necessarily, but later in his career, I think certainly such a young guy. But the South Sudanese big man is he's the youngest player. I shouldn't say the first. He's the youngest player to compete in the FIBA World Cup, which is a pretty gnarly thing to be able to say, right? He's only been playing basketball for 5 years, but his skill level is so evident. So evident. He's 7'2", but he moves very well with and without the ball. He can shoot. He can shoot very well from beyond the arc. Great footwork inside. Obviously can play above the rim very well and is a tenacious and high-level shot blocker. With that wingspan, it makes it difficult for anybody to shoot over or around Maluach. And so if you're Duke, and I'll talk a bit, I guess I'll kind of mesh this into what I expect the roster to look like. Now, a lot of this is pure speculation. We're not even in the postseason. Things can change. For me, though, I've talked about who Duke has coming in, those 6 players. They're not going to add anybody else. I personally don't even expect Duke to do anything in the transfer portal. Not really, at least. Besides maybe picking up a guy like Neil Begovic, perhaps. Shout out to the fact that Begovic is not getting senior night love. Ryan Young, though, being celebrated as if he were a 4-year senior, which I like the idea of that. But anyway, 6 guys coming in. Obviously, you've got 13 scholarship players active for Duke right now. You're losing Hubbard. You're losing Young. And I firmly believe, I think I listened to the Brotherhood podcast episode where Ryan, Jeremy, and Spencer were talking. And Jeremy used the word "it could be" his last game in Cameron, which kind of insinuates that he still has the door open for a 5th-year return. But part of me just kind of thinks that's not going to be the case. I just have that gut feeling. So I'm going to say Roach isn't going to play that 5th year. I think we're going to see his genuine senior night on Saturday. So that's not the RJ Davis senior night, which we know he will be getting his actual one next year, or the 2-time senior night that Baycott had at Carolina. But we've got those 3 guys free in scholarships. We know that. I think it's pretty safe to say that Kyle Filipowski is almost certainly going to go to the NBA. He's a projected top 10 pick by most. So Filipowski, he's out the door. And then Jared McCain, for me, he's ready. He's just such a high-level shooter, and I think he can defend at a high level. And so McCain, for me, he's being mocked anywhere from like 16 to 20. I think McCain's going to go to the NBA. I think it's too much to pass up, and I think that he's ready as a shooter, quite frankly. So there's 5 that are freed up rather easily. And now here's where it gets a little dicey, right? Transfers. I think there are 4 legitimate transfer candidates. None of them are Mark Mitchell. I've talked about this before. Please stop saying you think Mark Mitchell's going to transfer. If Mark Mitchell doesn't play for Duke next year, it's going to be because he went into the NBA. Anyway, I don't think he's going to do that either. But there are 4 legitimate candidates probably for transferring. Jaden Schutt, Christian Reeves, Jalen Blakes, TJ Power. I don't think Blakes transfers. And it might just be me in denial, but for some reason, I think TJ Power is going to come back as well. I, however, think Christian Reeves will transfer. There's bigs coming in. Sean Stewart is being developed very well as of late, and I don't know how many opportunities there will be for Reeves. I think Christian Reeves will enter the transfer portal. I also believe Jaden Schutt will enter the transfer portal. I think there's kind of a sentiment out there that they don't think Schutt's going to enter the portal, and the reason for that is because he just could have done it at any point throughout the season or even before the season because he had season-ending injury or surgery, and it's just like, well, why just sit around on the bench for an entire year? And it's like, well, why switch schools? Why not just do it in the off season? Just go ahead and get that other year of school done at Duke. And I don't know. He might not, but I just think there's so many players that play similar positions who are going to be vying for playing time. I'm not saying Schutt can't earn that playing time. He's a very good player. I'm also not saying that for Christian Reeves, and I don't want to push either of those guys out the door. Do not get me wrong. I never want to push a player out the door. I think both of them are very good players that can earn time. I've glowingly spoken about Christian Reeves, especially in the past. And so it is my hope that no one transfers from the team. But I honestly don't think that it's even possible, really, for this team to happen if there aren't a couple players too. And if I had to guess, those are the two I'm picking. So if that happens, you've freed 7, you've brought in 6. Now you got 12 scholarships. I say just throw that 13th one at Stanley Borden as a senior next year. That's my piece of advice. And if that happens, here's what I see as Duke's ideal roster and its ideal rotation. I think you've got Tyrese Proctor at the 1. A lot of people might disagree with me that Proctor's coming back, but I firmly believe the second backcourt player is currently on Duke's roster, and it's either Proctor, McCain, or Roach. And who do I think one is the most likely to return based on, just his performance this season, being up to par? It's Proctor. And then 2, who's going to come back because he has the most to gain from coming back? It's Proctor. I actually think his draft stock can go up. He'll still be the age of like a college sophomore after next season. He'll still be a young prospect even after his 3rd year in college. Might as well go, make all that progress toward getting your degree. I don't know what his progress looks like. He could even potentially get that degree in 3 years. Who knows? But, make that progress towards getting that degree. And I think Duke's been so loaded in the backcourt this year that at times some players take back seats to others, especially offensively. And I think more often than not, Tyrese Proctor gets a little reserved offensively and doesn't take as many shots as he maybe could or should. And he takes a bit of an offensive backseat to Roach and McCain. Now, if he comes back next season, he's not taking an offensive backseat to anyone in the backcourt. He is the primary offensive option in the backcourt, and I don't think there's really much doubt about that if he returns. Plus, his ability as a passer is especially alluring with Cooper Flagg and Khaman Maluach on the team now, especially with Maluach as a lob threat. That is especially intriguing with a upperclassman team captain for his 2nd year as a team captain, presumably if he would return as a junior, for Tyrese Proctor. And so I think that's a very interesting dynamic. So I like the idea of Proctor being there, and I don't think it's outlandish to believe he could be there. I don't love the amount of speculation that I'm doing right now, but it's interesting. It's something we're all doing right now, right? It's something that people like to think about. I know that as a basketball fan, and that's why I'm doing it, honestly. Sometimes I think it can be more harmful than good, and I'm aware of that, and I don't want to create any negative narratives surrounding players. I think we should all root for every player to return, and if they don't, we wish them absolutely nothing but success and nothing but the best, no matter what their draft scenario looks like, no matter what you think they could have done at Duke or they should have left Duke or whatever it is. Just be supportive of them, because that's kind of, I think, this concept of the brotherhood, is strong for these players, but I think it should extend to the fans and the viewers a little bit as well, that they should just receive support. from the people who love watching them play. But just for what I think the roster could look like, and obviously I'm going to be wrong on this. There's no way me on March 8th is getting this right. But Proctor at the 1, and then Caleb Foster in the backcourt with him. Foster as a sophomore can be very good. I'm not sure if or when we will see Caleb Foster again for his freshman season, given his injury, but we'll see about that. But I think a backcourt of Proctor and Foster is very good. And then the forward slots, Mark Mitchell and Cooper Flagg, and then at center, Khaman Maluach. That starting lineup would be the strongest in the country by a considerable margin. And it would also be the best defensive 5, I think, that any team could even possibly offer up. If you're talking shot blocking, just Maluach and Flagg alone is a ludicrous shot blocking duo. That is a crazy defensive duo in the front court. Add Mark Mitchell into that front court could be the best defensive front court in Duke basketball history. Plain and simple. And then Tyrese Proctor is a very capable defender. And I think Caleb Foster is improving as a defender, and he has the size to be a very capable defender in the backcourt. And so I love that starting lineup. And then I like the idea of having McDonald's All-American Isaiah Evans as kind of that 6th, 7th man coming in. He's a projected 13th pick. I like how talented he is offensively. At the moment, I don't see him as a starter. But I do see him as a very strong Trevor Keels-like player in terms of role on the team. And he's just a high-level scorer. He's a cocky guy, but in a good way, like Jared McCain this year, And I like his game. And having him come, first or second off the bench, and then the other guy that's first and or second off the bench being Sean Stewart, who's developed very well and being Duke's primary big man backup kind of next season for Maluach and Flagg. Then I think at that point, you're looking at TJ Power as a comfortable 8th man. Kind of the amount of minutes you see Ryan Young playing, maybe be what TJ plays more than he's playing this year. I think he's a comfortable 8th man. And then for me, it's like the 9th and 10th men. I like Con and Patrick there. And I think that they're going to play similar roles and similar minutes that we saw Sean Stewart and TJ Power play this season. I think that's what you can kind of expect from Con and Patrick playing time PT wise. That takes you through 10 guys. And then you'd have Jalen Blakes, who I expect to see a bit of a minutes drop off, but certainly not an exclusion in the early season. Blakes will play every game in the early season as a senior. I have no doubts about that. But I think that the minutes will trail off toward the end of the year as they have in the first 2 seasons of the Shire era. And then my recommendation would be that maybe Darren Harris redshirt. I don't know how many available minutes there would be to him, but I think he's a spectacular player. And if he can develop for 1 year and then get him for 4 more afterwards, I think he can be lethal player for Duke. So that's how I see the rotation panning out for Duke next season. At the moment, that's subject to a lot of changes. We'll see. But that's that. I think that Maluach fits in incredibly well. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's mocked to go 3rd in the NBA draft, and then Flagg projected, as many think, is pretty much the presumptive first pick. But for me, and I talked about this on Twitter as well, that for as good as Khaman Maluach will be at Duke, and I'm sure he will be fantastic, he's going to be leaps and bounds better of an NBA player because he's been playing at the NBA Academy Africa, and he is just being trained specifically to play in the NBA and be that modern mold big in the league. Shot blocker, runs the floor, moves well with the ball, can put the ball on the floor, can shoot it. Length. He's prototype modern all-star NBA big man. And for me, Duke is in a position, a very unique position perhaps, where they have 2 freshmen who I could seriously see being the 1st and 2nd pick in the draft. But not only that, I could seriously see these 2 guys, either of them or even both of them, being league MVPs in the NBA one day. Genuinely. Now, injuries permitting, there's so many things that go into a career, obviously, but they have the base skill and talent and resolve, I think, to be that good. So, and I think they're both winners and they want to win. And that's important for Duke next season as they have a very talented roster that could be a championship roster, albeit a young one. And that's kind of where, and that's another reason why I think Proctor would be an important guy to come back, he and Mitchell. Because if you can't get Proctor and Mitchell back, you're going to have a really, 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 really young basketball team. And it's going to make things tough. Very tough. But that brings me to my next point. The does less with more crowd. The Duke celebrating their recruiting national championships. You know, they're not actually good at this. Blah, they get all the talent, but they don't win anything. First and foremost, that's not really true. That 2016 recruiting class with Tatum and Giles was a good one. They dealt with a lot of injuries. It was a very young team. It still won the ACC tournament title. It was a 2 seed. 2018, very talented class. 2 centimeters away of Allen's shot rolling in and going to the Final Four. Zion's team was the number 1 overall team in the country. They were also 1 play away from the Final Four, which maybe even could have led to a national title had they made it there. There's so many tiny moments in college basketball, especially in the NCAA tournament, that make or break a run, that I think it's kind of ridiculous to call those teams failures. But first of all, the other point is just how young they were. But this team, I don't think people understand. Cooper Flagg is 17 years old, and he won't turn 18 until the very end of the calendar year. Duke will be, it'll be 2 months after Countdown to Craziness. Duke will have been playing regular season basketball for almost 2 months when Cooper Flagg turns 18. He'll be 17 up until that point. Khaman Maluach will turn 18 in September. So, for all of the summer workouts, he'll be 17 years old. And then Flagg and Maluach will both be 18 when they play in March Madness. They'll both be 18 when they're drafted into the NBA, 18 when they play in the Summer League. And then Flagg will be 18 for the first couple months of his NBA career. He won't even turn 19 until, 2 months into playing regular season NBA basketball. These two guys both are reclasses. They're both, yes, exceptionally talented, and I expect big things from both of these guys, but they're both also exceptionally young, and I don't want that to get lost on anybody, especially in the world in which most of these other contending college basketball teams are building their rosters around super seniors and the transfer portal, where they've got 22, 23, 24, even sometimes 25-year-old players rocking their colors, and Duke's going out there with 18-year-olds. And then the criticism is, well, you've got so much talent, you can't even beat them. And it's like, dude, really? Like, come on, man. Like, you do better. And also, don't act like if you couldn't get Cooper Flagg and Khaman Maluach that you wouldn't. You would, obviously. Overall, let's just say very excited to have Maluach coming to Duke. He's a very humble and intelligent young man who Duke fans should love having there. And quite frankly, even if you're not a Duke fan, if you hate on that guy, I don't really know what to tell you. You got a lot of hate in your heart if at any point you hate on him next season. So that's kind of the recruiting aspect of the episode. I do want to touch on some more Twitter beef. I know I've talked about how in the world do the Kentucky fans keep finding me, and they keep just harping on the stuff. And I made the post about best backcourt because that's what Quinn Cook said to Tyus Jones after Duke beat Carolina in 2015. He said, "I love you, bro, best backcourt." And that's kind of where that came from. And then Kentucky fans were just like attacking me. And I'm like, dude, how do you guys keep finding me? This is crazy. Why are you so dialed in? But anyway, Kentucky fans, crazy in my mentions. Carolina fans, crazy in my mentions. UConn fans at times have been crazy in the mentions. Shout out right now for only this season to Kansas fans for like being the blue blood not in my mentions. I appreciate that. But I just wanted to make a quick point out of that. But previewing the more immediate pressing matter, which is the Carolina game. Carolina, I don't know, for maybe like the last 10 or 12 games, I've come into the night with just kind of a gut feeling that I've known whether Duke was going to win or lose. It's been the most calm I've been while watching Duke basketball, perhaps my whole life. because I feel like I've gotten a pretty good feel for this team. And before the games, I've just kind of been like, yeah, they're going to win. They're going to win this game. Or twice in the last, a little bit over a month, I've been like, I don't think they are going to win this game. And I think they could play a good game. This game is a game they're not going to win. And that's how I felt in the game for Chapel Hill. And that's how I felt for the Wake Forest game in Winston-Salem. I don't feel that way for this one. I think Duke's going to win this. I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty darn confident Duke's going to win. Carolina, outside of that Notre Dame game, has kind of been slipping and showing weaknesses. Duke, on the other hand, has perhaps played better basketball than anyone in the country over the last month or so. They've been very, very good, especially over the last few weeks. And I just cannot see Duke losing this game on Saturday. I might end up telling all of you that I'm so sorry for saying this and that I've jinxed the team. I hope that's not the case, but I feel good about this game for Duke. I do. Obviously, there's going to be adjustments made. Hubert Davis is going to expect Duke to throw that hard face guarding defense. And I even heard, in a press conference, he said that he's been putting, Creighton Lebo or Paxson Wojcik on Davis, face guarding him during practice to sort of prepare him for that. I think that it is important that Duke limit RJ Davis from getting on a heater and play him in a similar fashion. And I don't think that it'll really harm them to play him in a similar fashion. He can even have a better game than he had last time, and it's fine. What Duke needs to do is be prepared to keep Filipowski out of foul trouble early, if they can, and then just try their hardest to get on the boards and prevent Ingram and Bacot from dictating the game. They have to neutralize the front court battle. And for me, it starts with Mark Mitchell's defense on Ingram. I really think that if Mitchell can keep Ingram honest and keep him off the 3-point line and take away that part of Ingram's game and keep Carolina in the interior, that way you can just make it a brute force battle. And we'll see how it goes. I think Duke's backcourt has been just marvelous lately, and obviously that's where Duke will win the game if they are lucky enough to do so. I think it'll be from the play of Roach and McCain and Proctor, and they'll be great. But I am looking forward to hopefully some good games from Filipowski, Mitchell, and Stewart really as well after his game against NC State, which was so impressive. So I think there's a lot that'll go into this game, but there's also so much unpredictability every time Duke and Carolina play each other, and so much more about Duke Carolina is less X's and O's and more just how do you feel this game is going to go in your gut. And so it's a lot of heart in this game, and so it's different than in any other one, but this one's big. Since 2001, Carolina has played Duke with the opportunity for the Heels to either clinch the regular season title outright for themselves, or a co-win for themselves, or to prevent Duke from tying them, or for the ACC title. That has happened 8 times in the last game of the season when the two teams have met, and Carolina has won all 8. They're 8-0. In those matchups. And so, every stat has to change at some point, right? And it feels like it's a pretty good time to go 1-8. That's what it feels like to me. I think they've got a good chance at that. And I don't care how the seeding pans out. I'll talk about it after it's done and after the game's done, whether Duke is the 1 or the 2 seed. They could be the 2 seed win or lose on Saturday. They can only be the 1 seed with a win, of course. And we'll see how it goes. It should be exciting. Next time I'm on here, I'll be talking about the Duke Carolina game. I'll be talking about senior night and Jeremy Roach, a reflection of Jeremy Roach's career, as well as Ryan Young and Spencer Hubbard. But none of them will be done after Saturday because I've got to talk about the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. And I will be at the ACC tournament, and I'll talk more about that next episode. But as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. Make sure you follow Duke Wisdom on Twitter and Instagram, and also subscribe or follow the podcast wherever you're listening. Thank you as always, and have a great time watching Duke Carolina on Saturday. It's March, guys. Let's have fun.